So we're talking about this idea today. This is a pretty cool word, but we're going to unpack it a little bit. So it's wisdom. I want to start off with this question. What do you think it means to have wisdom? What do you think it means to be wise?
To know a lot of things, like I know that I know a lot of math.
Okay. Yeah, to know a lot of things.
Your grandma write your own math.
For sure. Yeah. Wisdom. Okay. Yeah, for sure. Anybody else? Wisdom. What do we think here? Yeah. To know right from wrong. Yeah. Anything else? Hey, so stay with me, buddy, all right? Yeah. Okay, yeah, for sure. To always know what to do in bad situations. You see, wisdom's even a little different than knowledge. Because knowledge is this idea of like, hey, I was knowledgeable, so I got a good grade on that test. I was knowledgeable so that I was smart, I was sophisticated. Wisdom's a little different in that sense. You see, wisdom's this idea of knowing right and wrong, knowing good from evil, knowing kind of what to do, how to give strong advice, how to give powerful advice, and how to make the most of situations, specifically when they get tricky. Like in life when you're like, hey, I'm going up against this thing that's this tough thing, that's this scary thing. What do I do? What's the right answer? Wisdom is when you can talk to someone who's wise or even tap into God's word and find out, you know what, here's something that I can do to make the most of this situation that's maybe difficult, that's maybe hard, that's maybe complicated. Another way that you could say, like, what is wisdom is this. Wisdom is actively chasing what's good rather than what's evil. You see, wisdom is this idea of doing the right thing even when it's tough, and even knowing what the right thing to do is. I want to talk with you guys a little bit about this idea here. Have any of you guys ever done something in life that you knew was dumb, but you did it anyways? What do we think? Yeah, how many people have been in a place where it's like, you knew something was dumb, but you did it anyways? Sigrid's just smiling. She's like, that's every day for... No, I'm just playing. No, I'm just kidding, Sigrid. Yeah, so nonetheless, I've been in a place where there's been a lot of things where I've been like, hey, that's a dumb thing to do, but I've still done it, right? And we've all been there. And generally what happens whenever we do things that we know is dumb and we do it, what happens? We get in trouble, grounded, phone gets taken, right, that sort of thing. So when I was actually a little more than you guys, that's probably a junior in high school. We talked about this before. But anyways, like my high school dudes small group wanted to go on this camping trip. And so I was all geared up. I was like, dude, this is going to be awesome. This is a family adventure. We're going to have an awesome time. So I'm like, I need to get everything ready. I need to get my tent. I need to get stuff to make food. I need to get like little s'more sticks. And on top of that, I need a way to find like some light so that when it's dark at night, we can still play some cards, we can hang out and talk. So I'm like, I need a lantern. Now, I didn't have a lantern, being like a broke junior dude. I was like, what's a lantern? What's money? I don't know. So anyways, my dad had this lantern that I just thought was the coolest thing. It was this new fancy like Ryobi battery powered lantern that he just bought. He like loved this thing. So I'm like, hey Dad, can I take your lantern camping? And he's like, no. So what did I do? I asked him like 40 more times. I'm like, please Dad. And he's like, no. I don't want you to take that. I'm scared it could get lost. I'm scared it could get broken. So in that moment, the wise thing to do definitely would have been like, you know what? Make a fire. Yeah, that's good. We made a fire. I still wanted my lantern, But the wise thing to do would have been like, hey, Dad said no. I'm not going to take the lantern. But what did I do? I took that lantern. So fast forward, it's like 1 a.m. My dad's a night owl, and he calls me. And I thought he was just checking in, and he's like real calm, like too calm, like airily calm, And he's like, hey Matt, I gotta ask you a question. I'm like, what's that? He's like, did you take my lantern? And I was like, yes. And he's like, we'll talk about this tomorrow. What happened the very next day? As soon as I get home, he pulls me aside. I'm grounded for like 2 months straight. He's like, dude, I told you 100 times not to take that lantern, and you blatantly just disobeyed me, disrespected me, and took it anyways. The worst part of that story is we didn't even use the dang lantern. 2 months, no use of the lantern. You see, I knew it was dumb, yet I did it anyways. That wasn't wise. This idea of chasing wisdom matters. But for us to chase wisdom, for us to be wise in every circumstance in life, we need to understand what it means to be wise. We need to understand this idea of wisdom. So I'm going to ask you guys a couple of different questions here. And some of you may disagree with the answer, some of you may agree, we'll probably be in a place where some people will be like, hey, I think this is wisdom, and other people will be like, I don't. And then I'm going to share with you my thoughts. So let's go ahead and throw this up here. There's going to be a couple questions, and I want you guys to say whether you think it's wise or not. So you can just shout that out. I want you to say whether you think this is true or not. A wise person is always telling people what to do. Do you guys agree or disagree? What do we think? Disagree? I would say I disagree as well. I mean, a wise person might be offering advice, but that doesn't mean they're bossy. That doesn't mean they're telling people what to do. How about this? A wise person has a good idea of what's good and helpful. Do you agree or do you disagree? Agree? I would agree with that as well. How about this? A wise person thinks highly of themselves. Agree or disagree? Disagree? I disagree as well, too. I mean, maybe they have a sense of self-confidence, but they're not cocky. They're humble, right? We talked about being humble last week. A wise person takes care of themselves before they take care of others. Agree or disagree? So, actually, how many disagrees? I would agree with this statement. Because here's the deal. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't properly take care of others. In other words, you can't give what you don't have. So you still need to take care of yourselves, oftentimes, even first. A wise person doesn't make mistakes. Agree or disagree? Disagree for sure. We all make mistakes, right? We all take a lantern every once in a while. Yeah? How about this? A wise person is usually rich or powerful. Agree or disagree? Disagree, yeah, for sure. Now, I will say this though. People who are generally wise are usually successful in what they do. That sort of idea. They usually have a track record, they're well respected, that sort of thing. A wise person is a good problem solver. Agree or disagree? Agree. For sure, yeah. A wise person in theory is someone who you can go to for advice, someone who's going to help you out, someone who's going to walk you through this idea of kind of what the right decision is, what the right choice is in each circumstance. I want to share with you guys a piece of scripture here that talks about wisdom. We talked a little bit about what it is. We talked about kind of the difference between wisdom and being unwise. But I want to look at God's word here. Because more than anything, where does wisdom come from? It comes from experience, it comes from learning things, it comes from other wise people, but more than anything, wisdom starts here. It starts with God. So if we want to really be wise people, which all of us should, if we really want to use our influence, which we talked about, every single one of you guys has influence. If you want to use that for good, you've got to be wise. If you want to use your influence for good and not evil, it's got to start here. Man, this is your key to being wise. It's your key to getting to know the heart of God. So we're going to look here at Proverbs 4, 6, and 7. I want you to follow along with me. And this actually comes out of the book of Proverbs. Does anyone know who wrote Proverbs? Solomon. Yeah. Which I don't know if you guys actually know this, but there's a story in the Bible where Solomon was this dude who was king, and his dad was actually king as well. And so he's like, hey, Solomon, you're about to become king. Here's the deal. I'm going to give you anything that you ask for. And now if you're Solomon and God's like, hey, I'm going to give you anything you ask for, what would you guys ask for? I'd be like, I want a new car. I want a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. I want the Buckeyes to win the national championship next year. You know, that's what I'd ask for. That sort of thing, right? But what did Solomon ask for? He's like, hey, God, I don't need the money. God, I don't need the fame. I don't need people to, respect. I'm not going to ask for people to respect me or worship. I'm not going to ask for any of that. God, I pray that you'll give me wisdom. I ask that you'll give me wisdom. And because of that, the Bible actually says that Solomon was the wisest person to ever live. And because of that, he was rich, he was popular, and he was very well respected, all because of his wisdom. So when Solomon talks about wisdom, we better listen up, right? So this is Proverbs 4, 6, and 7. And he says this. He says, do not forsake wisdom. Do not forsake wisdom, and she will protect you. Love her, and she will watch over you. And then he says this. The beginning of wisdom is this. This is just so simple, but it's so good at the same time. And it's kind of like, this is kind of what wisdom is. Sometimes it is simple. He's like, the beginning of wisdom is this. Get wisdom. Everybody say, get wisdom. So the first thing Solomon says is, hey, if you want to be wise, you got to get wise. Right? He's like, hey, if you want to be a wise person, you have to get wisdom. We're going to talk about this idea of getting wisdom. And then he says this. Though it costs you all you have, get understanding. And I was even thinking through this idea here. It's like, hey, get wisdom and get understanding. But then that last part there, it says this. It says, though it costs you all you have, you got to get these things. And I was kind of like, what does it cost you? And I was thinking through this idea. I'm like, what does this idea of wisdom cost you? Because it says it costs you something. And I think it costs you a few different things. I think wisdom costs you not always having to be right. Like, when you're in a fight, being wise is being the bigger person and walking away instead of being like, no, I'm right, you're wrong, you're dumb, I'm smart, right? Like, that's not wise, right? So sometimes wisdom costs you the idea of always being right. Other times, gaining wisdom can cost you some time. Like, it takes time to become wise. Nobody woke up except for Solomon, I guess, because God just blessed him with this. It's like, hey, I'm wise now, right? You need to learn from other people. Wisdom costs you having tough conversations where you learn from people who are older than you and people who are wiser than you, telling you, hey, in this circumstance, you got it wrong, you can be better than that. But above anything, he says, get wisdom. And for us to get wisdom, our last point's this, or second to last point. For us to get wisdom, you didn't throw that up there, Josh. We need wisdom, or we all need wisdom, and people who can help us find it. So for us to give wisdom, we need to follow people and chase after people and look up to people and respect people and have conversations with people who are wise. So I want to ask you this question. What's an area of your life right now where you're wrestling? And I want you to think about this. What's an area of your life where something's going on that's a tough thing? And you don't have all the answers, and maybe you're a little scared, maybe you're a little uneasy, maybe you're a little nervous, maybe you're concerned about this area, and you're like, you know what? In this area, I need some help. What's an area in your life? Dude, we've all been there before. I've been there before. Now, I mean, honestly, we're probably all in an area like this 24/7, right? And then my question to you is this. Who's someone in your life that can help walk you through this? Who's a wiser person that's a borderline expert in that area? Someone who's been in your shoes before. And they've been like, hey, I know how it feels to feel this way. I know how it feels to have some family drama. I know how it feels to have some drama with people at school who are kind of jerks. Let me walk you through it. Let me tell you what worked for me. Man, your challenge is to chase after people like that. Wise people who've been in your shoes, who can help you through it. What's a problem that you want fixed in your life right now? Who's someone that can help you get some wisdom in that area? Our last one's this idea. It's a challenge here. What's the point of this lesson? Two things. The first one is get wisdom. And the second one is you're called by God to be an influencer. But you're going to have a limit on what you can do to influence others for Him if you're not wise. So this point here, to be an influencer, chase good and not evil. Last week we said that every single person in here is an influencer. That means everybody in here, even you, when you're like, I don't feel like I influence anybody, you have influence. It's such a big thing. You have influence over your family, over your friends, over people at school, over the people in your youth group that you're sitting next to right now. Each and every one of you has influence. And the truth is, that's like kind of cool on one side, and on the other side, it kind of stinks because that means you got to live up to it, right? That's sort of idea. However, here's the deal, man. I don't want you to look at it as like, oh, I have influence. That means I got to be perfect. No, it doesn't mean you got to be perfect. It doesn't mean you can't make mistakes. But it means this. If you have influence, I hope you have a desire in your heart to make the most of that influence. I want to ask you this. What's something like you want to be remembered for? What's a positive influence that you want to have on somebody? What's something good that you want to do for somebody or something or even this world? Like, what's something good that you want to do? How do you want to influence people positively? Man, this whole idea of being an influencer who influences people for the better starts with wisdom. So your challenge this week, chase wisdom and use it for good. Let's pray together. God,